Welcome to another episode of Monday tsene with Pretoria Psychologists. My name is Mawelele. Today I was speaking to you about boundaries in relationships. So in terms of boundaries, we are not only talking about intimate relationships, but this can be related to every type of relationship that is out there, be it with family, be it with friends, with strangers, or with people you know, your colleagues. And this is really important because it helps us understand where we start and where the other person begins. Boundaries are important as without them, we will find ourselves feeling depleted, feeling overwhelmed, feeling as if people are not considerate of how we are feeling, not taking into consideration our own emotions, our values, and our own thoughts. So we will just speak briefly on what are boundaries, what are healthy boundaries, and how we can cultivate and manage boundaries in relationships. So essentially, we put boundaries in our relationships to help us draw a limit as to what we feel comfortable with. In a relationship, you will have to communicate what is important to you, and this is a form of communicating your boundaries. For instance, if I'm in an intimate relationship and I value, for me, it is important to spend time with my partner. That's me communicating my boundaries because that is what is important to me, and this is what makes me comfortable. And if, for instance, with a friend, I do not wish to share my clothes or my living space, that is me communicating my limitations to say, we can be friendly, we can do this friendship thing, but here it stops, and there, that's where then it becomes my own personal and private space. So the reason why we talk about boundaries, it helps us to understand that there are needs that we have as human beings, there are values that we have, and there's also beliefs and opinions that we hold, but sometimes these are not clearly communicated to others, or they're not known by the other individuals. And it is through these boundaries, therefore, that we are able to say, these are my needs and this is how you can meet them. For instance, the need for personal space. This is how you then communicate to the other person, I do not prefer hugs. I would prefer that we do a handshake because I don't feel comfortable with hugs, especially to people that you do not know. So essentially, and going back to the basics of it, these are your needs. You are communicating to other individual what your needs are, what your values are, what you're comfortable with, and what you do not wish to engage in. So how do we go about knowing our boundaries or even begin to communicate them to others? Because we cannot communicate what we're not aware of to other people. So this requires us to stop and pay attention to our own emotions, our own thoughts, what we think is important to us. So we will have a sense of awareness to say, okay, maybe you have had an encounter or an experience with someone where they gave you a hug and you didn't know them and it was awkward, you felt like you didn't want to do this. That is an indication that is a boundary that has been crossed. Therefore, it needs to be explored. You need to take a moment to explore, okay, what is the boundary here? What is it that I'm comfortable with, and how do I begin to communicate them? Sometimes we might feel as though we don't want to communicate our boundaries because we don't want to offend other people. However, if you think about it, this would be an injustice to yourself as a person. It means you are disregarding your own emotional or physical boundary needs that you have from the other person and putting them first. So we need to stop and pay attention to our physiological experiences. Like I said, it could be the discomfort of someone staring at you. They are maybe invading your personal boundary space. Therefore, communicate that, is there something that you would like to speak to me, or I see that you are staring and this makes me uncomfortable. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with communicating this. The most important thing is how this is communicated, but it starts with that awareness of what is my own personal needs and how do I begin to explain these or share these with other individuals. In order for us to be able to have awareness of our own boundaries, we need to be able to distinguish that there's healthy boundaries and unhealthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are those ones that ensure that we feel respected and that we feel safe and that we are able to connect to other people without feeling overwhelmed or violated. Unhealthy boundaries, on the other end, they tend to make an individual feel controlled or feel that they are unsafe. or that they are at harm. For example, if, for instance, you want to go somewhere and your partner indicates that you will not go to a particular place unless, therefore you feel that these boundaries are being imposed on you, therefore you feel you're being manipulated or controlled, you need to set clear boundaries with that particular person or partner. There's also different types of boundaries. So the first one that we're going to chat about is physical boundaries, and I've already alluded to it earlier on. This speaks to personal space and your physical body, the distance and the proximity and all that. It's being able to communicate to other individuals how you want them to interact with your personal space, with your physical body, in a manner that will still make you feel that you are safe. So sometimes people can, I've made the simple example of greet you for the first time by giving you a hug, because maybe that's how they do it. For example, in other families, they want to greet with a full-on kiss and a hug. And for some of us, this can be a bit of a shock to the system and feel that your personal space and your physical space is being invaded, and you do not wish to return the kiss as you are not comfortable with this. And now it's learning to understand that, okay, this is me. I don't prefer to interact with everyone in the same manner. So how do we begin to communicate that with other individuals in a manner that is considerate and also safe for you, that you will feel connected to them and you will feel that you're not being violated. And the second type of boundary is emotional boundaries. So this one is quite common, but a lot of people tend to miss it simply because sometimes we're not even aware of our own personal emotional boundaries, where we want to stop emotionally and where the other individuals begin, or how much of other people's emotional put on do we want to take. So sometimes individuals come forward to us and they share their personal emotional experiences. So you might find after that experience has been shared with you, this kind of like leaves that emotion with you. It lingers longer with you. You feel sad, or you take on whatever emotion with the anger that they have expressed to you. But it's knowing and being able to separate and say, these are my feelings and these are the other individual's feeling. Maybe a friend could come and express how angry they are with A, B, C, and D. I need to be able to distinguish, that's their anger, what is my take on the matter, and how am I going to react to it. We don't always have to react in the same way as the other individual because it's a friend of mine. Now I have to be biased and react in the same way because that's what we do. But it's saying, okay, I hear you and I empathize. This is a really tricky type, and it requires you to have a lot of emotional intelligence so that you can be able to distinguish your own emotions and the other person's emotional experience, and be able to separate and empathize as it is required at different times. And the third one is intellectual boundaries. These are opinions, beliefs, thoughts, and on various topics. We could all have the same experience, but we could have different opinions, and it is okay for other individuals to have their own opinion, and for you also to feel safe to express your own opinions and belief. This is therefore, like I said, it requires you to know, okay, what are my opinions on certain matters? For instance, critical issues around politics, about education, vaccination. Then you are able to know, what is my stance, what is my thoughts, what are my beliefs, and how do I begin to draw boundaries. Certain individuals will tell you, I do not wish to communicate or speak about politics in dinner, because they understand, maybe they get very passionate about it, and or they're not too open to a lot of opinion in terms of politics, or they have a particular way that tends to make people uncomfortable, and therefore it's okay for them not to wish to communicate. So it's also important that you check in with yourself and find out, okay, what are my intellectual boundaries and how do I begin to communicate them to others? I've touched on some of the few boundaries that are out there, but it is now up to you to begin to pay attention to your own experiences so that you can see when your personal boundaries are being violated. For example, if someone disregards your thoughts, your feelings, or they disrespect your physical space, your physical body, your property, and in that way, when you have spotted these violations, you will begin to see what is important to you, what is valuable to you, and therefore communicate it to your to the people around you, be it family, friends, or even strangers. I hope you will be able to take care and manage those boundaries, as they are important in taking care of yourselves and the relationships of the people around you. See you next time.